We are actually going to be talking about the what. Yesterday, we talked about the who, if you were in here. We talked about how to identify these kids with learning disabilities in the classroom. You know, most teachers, you know, if you're a good teacher, you know when a kid's just kind of like off. Something just is not right. And then you kind of have these little feelers up and go, okay, something's going on, I don't know what it is. And we talked a little bit about that yesterday. We talked about how to identify those kids with learning disabilities in the classroom. I do have in the back, if you were not in my session yesterday, I have the handout, early warning signs for kids with learning disabilities. If you're wanting that, I would encourage you to pick that up on your way out. So we're talking about the what. How do we service these kids? Once we know who these kids are, okay, how do we take care of them? How do we service them? You know, although private schools are not, we talked about yesterday, just because we're in a private school, we're not necessarily required by federal law to provide special education services to our kids. It's not a requirement. You know, the government's not breathing down our throats as private schools to say, you have to do this. We are kind of an entity to ourselves. But we did establish yesterday, you know what? We ought to be. Christian educators of all people should be wanting to provide these kids the help that they so desperately need to be able to succeed in the classroom. And they can succeed. But sometimes they just do things a little bit outside of the box that we're used to teaching in. And it's necessary for us to understand that. Research tells us there's a noticeable absence of any, excuse me, went too fast there, come on. There's a notable absence of any research on how private schools provide inclusive special education services and which private schools are doing so. Part of my master's thesis was I researched what Christian schools were doing. And there is nothing out there, research-wise, literature-wise, zilch zero, as far as what are Christian private schools. And in that research, I also looked into parochial schools, what they're doing. And it's very little to nothing, really. Okay, so if we're not doing anything, then couldn't we ask the question, what more can we do? Are we doing enough? The divide, the extent to which private schools provide special education services to their students ranges from grudging acceptance of the law to wholehearted endorsement of the value of unlocking the potential of all students. So there's this like divide. There's this major extreme. So you got some Christian schools over here, private schools over here going, we just, no way. We don't have the money, we don't have the faculty, nope, sorry, go, we can't help you. And then you have other schools over here on the other end of the spectrum, just like, we'll do whatever. We will do it. We will. And I am here to say, okay, why don't we meet in the middle, y'all? Okay, let's find a balance in the middle. I'm very passionate about Christian education. I mentioned that yesterday. My kids go to Christian school. Can't imagine them going anywhere else but a Christian school. I love Christian schooling. And I am aware of the struggles that are in the Christian school movement. I am not blind to them. The Christian school movement is not what it was when I was in the Christian school movement 20 so years ago. I won't tell you how long. It's not. You know, I went to a school that had 700 in K through 12th out on the East Coast, one of the biggest Christian schools in Pennsylvania. And now that same school, they're lucky if they're getting 100, 150 a year. You know, the times have changed. And money is an issue. Finances are an issue. And teachers are tired. You know, teachers, you're getting dumped on. And I know that. You're getting asked, that, you know, here, let's just, all you have to do is, and you're thinking, yeah, all I have to do is, and I have this big old other pile of bricks over here that I'm doing on top of all I have to do is. And I understand the struggle. I work in the ministry myself, and I have those issues myself. You know, there's very little people doing like massive amounts of things. That's kind of the mantra of the Christian school movement, and frankly, the Christian university movement. It's the same way for us. So I get your struggle. And sometimes, when we hear, oh, we can be doing more, we kind of tune it out and we go, I can't do another thing. And I would ask that as we go through and we talk about some of these things, that you just kind of keep your mind open. And I'm not saying that you have to be the one to do all this. I'm saying that maybe you could be the change maker in your school. You could be the fire lighter. You could be the one to say, let's rally the troops per se, and say, let's do something together. That's what I'm saying. I'm not asking you to do it all because I know you can't. And I know if you do it all, then something is going to suffer, likely your health, your family, whatever have you. And that's not what I'm asking. So that's my heart. I just want to establish all that before we kind of jump into the servicing of our kids and understanding how we're going to do this. Are we doing enough? I love this quote. Private schools are well-intentioned, but not well-informed when it comes to the issue of disability, and I believe that. I believe that most Christian schools, they look at their kids and they want their kids to succeed. They want to help them. They have a heart of compassion. They just don't understand it. They don't know what to do. They're uneducated, if you will, in that area. And my passion is to educate. Okay, and I'm one of those, man, you give me knowledge and I'm like, okay, well, we got to do this because now I know this. My husband always tells me when they send the little town sheets around with all the laws on it, the town laws that nobody knows, he's like, don't you read that. Because as soon as you read that, we will have to follow that. I'm a rule follower. So I'm giving you knowledge. And for you rule followers out there, I'm expecting you to go and make change, okay? I'm hoping to ignite something in you. It is time for private schools to take up this gauntlet. Essentially, we need to recognize our responsibility to our students in this area. We need to stay informed about these important issues. Education is ever changing. I know that you're in the Christian school movement, but I'm telling you, if you follow the public school education at all, it literally changes. Sometimes week to week, month to month, I turn around and I'm like, wait a minute, what? Okay, it was this last week and now it's this week. It changes, and so keeping abreast of these issues is really important. Then information has got to turn into action as we recognize the importance of this issue for our constituency. What do your parents want in your school? You tell me. Why do they send kids to your school? They want them to succeed. Teach them the Bible.
They want them to get more attention than they would in the public school.
More attention. A Christian environment. Higher academics.
To love Christ and serve Him in the local church.
To love Christ and serve Him in the local church. A safe place. A biblical worldview. Wouldn't you also say teachers that love them? All of these things. A lot of research tells us this is why parents send their kids to Christian school. They're wanting lower student-to-teacher ratios. You know what the average class size, elementary class size in the public school is right now? Between 30 and 35. Some are pushing 40. Now, most of you, I would say, sitting in this room who are elementary school teachers, probably you're lucky if you're pushing 20. Can you imagine doubling the class size? They want lower student-to-teacher ratios. They want a nurturing environment. They send their kids because they want their kids with teachers that care about them, that love them, that will nurture them. They want a challenging curriculum. Wouldn't you say that, generally speaking, the private school curriculum is challenging? More challenging than the public school? Yep. I taught in the public school for a while. Yep, it is. Supportive services. They're looking for support. They expect support. They're paying money. They expect it, okay? And I would say that definitely providing the needed assistance to our SLD, and I'm sorry about how light this is, SLD stands for students, specific learning disability students, essentially. Our SLD students meets all of those specifications. So sometimes we are, wondering why, and we want to, provide things for our parents, and then we, as Christian schools, sometimes ignore it. We're ignoring what the parents are looking for. They're sending their kids to their school, your school, because they want the help. They want the support. They want the love. They want the Christian environment. They want the biblical worldview, and they are expecting it, frankly. And many Christian schools are not following through, especially when it comes to our kids with disability. So, what can we do? Can we do anything else? And I know immediately teachers, when they're like, do, oh my goodness, what is, that means I gotta do something. Let's talk about, collectively speaking, as the Christian school movement, what can we do? Number one, I think the easiest thing that teachers can do with kids with learning disabilities is provide accommodations or modifications in the classroom. And we are going to talk about, what does that mean? What is an accommodation and what is a modification? I'm going to teach you what that means, so you know the difference, and so you know what are some of the things that you as a teacher can easily implement into your classroom to help these kiddos. As a school, now this is where I'm lighting the fire under you and putting passion and helping you to advocate here. As a school, I believe that we are getting to the point, if Christian schools want to stay alive, and if there are administrators in here, I hope you're listening. If Christian schools want to stay alive, you have got to do this. You've got to. Because if you don't set up a learning center, a resource room, and we're going to talk about how to do that, for your kiddos that have special needs, the parents are going to pull them out and they're going to go to public school. I'm just telling you right now. Or parents are going to pull them out and they're going to homeschool them one-on-one. It's going to happen. What is happening? I'm sorry, it is. That's the reality of the situation. So you need to stay competitive, I guess, for lack of a better word, and get on the bandwagon here, y'all. We need this. This involves tutoring. This involves intensive intervention, and I will give you some ideas for that. This also involves extra encouragement, help, support in that room. So a person who's dedicated to doing that. When I say qualified learning specialist, I'm not saying, they have to have all these degrees, and just somebody who can teach reading, somebody who can teach math one-on-one, somebody who understands these kids. I would prefer it to be somebody who has a special ed degree. I think that would be a better thing. But, okay, so you've got somebody who's got a passion. Hey, you know what? Sometimes you can't teach passion. Okay, so if they're willing to help and they're willing to really intervene with these kids one-on-one, why not? You, as a teacher, you need to differentiate your teaching. And for those of you maybe who it's been, a little while since you've been in school, maybe you've not heard that term before. What is differentiated teaching? Students? That's exactly right. It's varying our teaching. How many of you ever had a professor in college who stood up at the lecture and they were like no pictures behind him, never did put a thing on the board, and he stood up there and wah, 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 and you fell asleep pretty much every day. Okay, that professor did not differentiate his teaching at all. He just talked like the Charlie Brown teacher and put you to sleep every day. And he was only going towards those whose strength probably was auditory learning, people that like to listen. As a teacher, you need to vary because kids learn differently. They have different strengths and weaknesses in how they learn. I usually like to say there's three main types of how kids like to learn: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Some kids are very visual. They've got to see it to learn it. Some kids are very auditory. They've got to hear it to learn it. And some kids are like, I got to work with it, or I got to move to learn it. My husband, I'll give you an example. My husband and I are two different types of learners. I'm an auditory learner, and he is a visual learner. So sometimes we have these faculty staff meetings, and somebody will get up and they'll talk about something, and if they do not have a PowerPoint behind them, reinforcing whatever is coming out of their mouths, my husband will not remember a thing, nothing. He tunes them out and he's just, whatever. I don't know what he's thinking about. Who knows? And then I will remember verbatim. I'll be like, oh, you were sitting right there. He said this and he'll be like, but he didn't have that visual to reinforce it. So you need to vary your teaching as a teacher. Mix it up a little bit. Provide a visual. You know, teacher, when you give a string of instructions to little elementary students, 5, 6, 7, 8 things in a row, and you put nothing to back visually, or you give them nothing visually to back yourself up, I would put money on it that probably 50% of your class is not going to follow through on all 8 of those things. They need you to back up what you're saying. They need that. They need that varied teaching. And then finally, you need to keep abreast of the issues. You know, like I said, special education it changes. Education just changes all the time. But keeping abreast, reading. You know, there's so many. The learning disability, I would highly recommend, if you are on Facebook and you aren't already, follow the Learning Disabilities Association of America. They put up great articles and great ideas for teaching kids with LD. Go to these websites, kind of keep it. If you're not sure about how to help a kid, go Google it. Goodness gracious. And teachers, pay teachers, or whatever that website's called. They have a lot of great multi-modality ways of teaching different materials. You know, find ways to do that. Keep abreast of the issues. So I told you I'm going to teach you what the difference is between modifications and accommodations. You need to know, let me start by saying this. More times than not, you are going to accommodate your students in education. You're not going to modify. Modifications, generally speaking, are for the more severe disability. The kids who have more of the intellectual disability, I would say. That kind of a thing. But I'm going to share with you anyway so you understand what the difference is. Modification is a change in what you expect them to know and understand. You're changing the curriculum for them. Let me give you an example. If you've got a little kiddo, we have at Calvary in Watertown this year, a local pastor in our town, his wife, they've homeschooled all 5 of their kids, and they've got little ones now at home that she's always homeschooled. And this year, she has stage 4 colon cancer. And mom just, you know, she just can't do it. And our school graciously came alongside and said, you know what can we do? Can we bring your kids in? And so we've got the kids. Well, one of their kids is a little boy with Down syndrome. I love this kid. He's just awesome. And I was just so excited that he's going to school. And so he's got Down syndrome. Is he intellectually, he is 14 years old. Is he intellectually probably where his peers are? No. He's not. He's actually going to class with the 4th graders. Because that's where he is, intellectually speaking. And it works for him. If we were to put him into the 8th grade class, and we were to say, okay, tomorrow's spelling test, and everybody has to do 25 or 30 words, whatever they do, I don't even know anymore. 30 words. Do you know what would happen to Seth if we required that of him? He'd completely fail. And I'm not saying that to be mean to Seth. I'm saying that is the reality of the situation. And so we have to change, even though his peers are here, we have to change his curriculum. So we put him at the 4th grade level because that is where he learns best. And what's really funny, it's really cute. His mom was telling me, I asked her, hey, how's Seth doing? And she said, you know, I've just kind of excused him, or I've not pushed him because I've always thought he couldn't do it. Well, now he's with Mr. Jones, and Mr. Jones pushes him, and I'm realizing he can do more than I ever thought he could do. So praise the Lord that he's doing very well. But that's what I mean when I say we change what we expect of them. So you've got a kid who's at a 6th grade reading level, and everybody else is at 8th or 9th grade. You need to go find a 6th grade reading level book for that child to read, or else he's not going to make it or she's not going to make it. That's what a modification is. You change what you expect of them. You change the instructional level. You change the content. You can change how they do the content, the assessment, that kind of a thing. Why? This is to provide students with meaningful and productive learning experiences. And that is a very operative word, productive. You know, if you've got a kid that's at 6th grade reading level and he's in a class with everybody who's in 8th and 9th grade reading level, is he going to be productive in learning trying to read what's in the 8th and 9th grade book? No, and what's likely going to happen is little Johnny's going to shut down on you. And he's not going to learn at all. And he might get belligerent, or he might get depressed. I don't know. There's all kinds of reactions that these kids can have because they feel like they're not succeeding. So understanding the difference between the two. Let's talk a little bit about accommodations. This is what you as teachers in the classroom, it's getting hot in here, isn't it? Holy moly, okay. All right, I thought it was just me, but it's not. All right, the difference between accommodations and modifications. Let's talk about it. Now this is, you make provision to allow the student to demonstrate what they know. For example, little Johnny has a reading disability. He struggles with comprehension. But when he hears it, there's something about hearing it being read that connects with him and he's able to do it. So we give him the accommodation of having his tests read to him. If you have a kid that has a struggle with reading comprehension, I'm just going to tell you right now, test it out. Give him a test without the accommodation having it read to him, and give him a test with having it read to him, and see the difference, y'all. It's amazing. That would be an idea of an accommodation. They've got it up here, but sometimes they just don't know how to get it out here. They don't know how to get it, and we give them accommodations to demonstrate what they do know. There's no substantial change. We're not changing anything. We're not lessening the math problems. We're not lessening the spelling. They have to do everything that everybody else does. We're just providing ways for them to be able to demonstrate what they know in a different way. Why? Because we want to provide students equal access. The idea of a kid, if you've got, okay, this is what gets me, because you know when people with learning disabilities, especially in our circles, okay, people think that learning disabilities, that like, it's all in their head. It's not a thing. This is just, you know, poppycock or whatever. I don't know. This is just people made this up. And it gets me kind of fired up. But anyway, you know, we look at a kid in a wheelchair and we go, oh, that's a kid with a disability. We need to put a ramp outside so that Johnny can get into the school. Because otherwise, he won't be able to come to school. So we put the ramp out. But when it comes to kids with learning disabilities, we can't see it. They don't look any different most of the time. In fact, when you look at them, you go, oh, they look like a typical child. But there's a lot going on inside that little noggin that we cannot see, and they do have a disability, and we are ambivalent to building the ramp for them to be able to demonstrate what they know. And that's all I'm saying, okay? Build the ramp, y'all. Just let, and you know, I get these teachers, well, that is just not fair. That is just not fair. Well, you know what? It is. It is fair because they're demonstrating what is in their little noggins, just like your typical child who knows how to write out a test and they're demonstrating what they know. It's not an issue of, you know, sometimes we just got to level, what I like to say, level the playing field. And the modifications are changing it. Accommodations are just leveling that playing field for those kids so that they can access, they can show what they know. That's all it is. It's not that we're trying to give them a one-up. We're not trying to, you know, make it, and if you'll notice, if you look at grades with kids with learning disabilities, even when you give them the accommodations, it's not like they're getting a one-up, y'all. They're just not, okay? It's leveling it for them. Giving them a chance to succeed, essentially, is what we're looking for. So, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about kind of what modifications look like. I'm going to kind of move down here. And this is on the worksheet, by the way. All of this is on the worksheet, so I would not, you know, don't kill your hand trying to write it all down. I'm just going to kind of highlight a few, and this is really hard to see. I apologize. Did somebody lower the lights yesterday? Oh, that's right, we did, didn't we? Thank you, I forgot about that. Okay, so a typical modification, let's say you have a project for your students, a paper that they have to write. So your kid with maybe a writing disability who really struggles to write, instead of making them write a whole paper, you make them outline it instead. They're showing you what they know, it's just that maybe they can't do the whole 5-page paper. Alternate books, like I was talking about a little bit before, you know, giving them a book according to their level of reading. Spell check. Goodness gracious, teach kids how to use spell check. You know, well, they need to know how to spell. You know what, some kids are, I'm sorry y'all, they're just not ever gonna learn how to spell. And if they have got a reading disability, if they have got a disability like that, allow them the use of spell check, okay? They're gonna, I got news for you. I use spell check. And I'm a good speller. They're gonna have that support when they get out of school. So give it to them, okay? Give it to them. A word bank. I think this is a great idea for teachers to give. Sometimes with these kids, it's a processing difficulty, and they have a terrible time doing what we call recall of facts. It's like they can't they've got it in their long-term memory. They just don't know how to go and find it. And so we give them the word bank to kind of jog their memory. So they get a different test, essentially. So your normal child, I'm sorry, I use that word, I only like to use that word. Your typical child would get a fill-in-the-blank test with no word bank. Your child with disability would get a fill-in-the-blank with a word bank. Does that make sense? It's kind of the difference there. Manipulatives. Well, they need to know how to add. Stop using their finger. No, you know what? Sometimes kids with a true math disability, I have a girl at the college. I deal with all of our accommodations at the college. She has a severe math disability. I mean, it's bad. It's so bad that she's an early childhood major, and she's required to do a math class, and we are putting every support in place to try to get this child through this math class. It doesn't work for her. So we allow her to use a calculator because it ain't happening in her head. It's just not going to happen. So you know what? Provide that for them if they've got that disability. Rewording questions in simpler words. Sometimes these kids can't handle too much clutter. Too much clutter in language. They shut down. Projects, again, instead of written report. You know, if they're kinesthetic, let them do a project. Let them instead of writing a report about the solar system, let them create the solar system. Highlighting words or phrases, teaching them how to do that. Shortening their assignments. Listen, if you've got a kid with a math disability and you give homework, I hate math homework. I hate math. 30 problems in a night. I got news for your kid with the disability. They're not going to do it. They cannot. Give them 10 problems, okay? Your typical child, yes, can do 30 in a night. Your kid with a disability, we're asking a lot to make them do 10. Same with spelling. Your typical kids can memorize how to spell 25, 30 words a week. Your kid with a disability, again, shorten that list for them. Shortening the tests, the quizzes, modifying their time demands. In other words, giving them extended time. Grading only on completed classwork. A lot of these times, you give them, Christian schools, we expect you're going to reach the bar. And if you don't reach the bar, it's wrong. Okay, grade them on what they did, what they accomplished. Sometimes their processing doesn't allow them to finish things. So see what they did and give them credit for that, okay? So let's talk a little bit about accommodations then. I'm gonna move these down here. Extended time. Oh, I went too fast. See, that's what I get. There we go. Extended time for assignments, for quizzes, for tests. Your class gets half an hour to take your test. Your kid with a disability gets an hour. That's why you need a resource room, by the way. That's why you need a resource room. The oral testing, like I talked about before, you give visual instructions as you're talking. I remember going to my son Trey, who struggles with processing. And I told you yesterday, if you give him instructions, he'll hear the first and the last. So I went to go observe his classroom because he was really struggling in one of his classes, and I was like, what is going on? And so I went to observe. And oh my God, the teacher literally, she gave a string of 10 instructions to the whole class, 5th and 6th graders. I want you to do this and this and this and this. I kid you not. It was just blah, 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 blah. And then here's Trey, like, and I'm watching that, and my blood pressure's rising because I'm like, I had osmosis. I'm like, pay attention, Trey. And he's not. He's in his own little world, playing with his pencils or whatever he's doing. And you know, Trey he did the first thing she told him to do, the class to do, and he did the last thing. Everything in between. But she didn't provide any visual prompt for those kids to look at. And to me, that is a very important thing as a teacher. Provide mnemonic aids, audio textbooks. I love audiobooks. Again, I'm going to use my son Trey. He struggles with reading comprehension. Reading is very laborious for him. He hates it. Now my son Ethan, who's 16, almost 16, he just finished reading the unabridged version of Les Miserables, almost 2,000 pages. It's ridiculous how much he reads. Then Trey, when we go to the library, Trey gets Ripley's Believe It or Not books and cookbooks and how-to books. That's what he reads because it's concrete and he doesn't have to infer anything. He doesn't have to think about it, So we had a biography due last month. And Dad picked the biography. That's really bad when Dad picks the biography. Dad comes home with a biography about C.S. Lewis. And it was like really heady. And so poor Trey sitting on the couch and he was reading this, but he was at page like 7 and he goes, oh, this is so boring. And I thought, oh my goodness, how are we going to get through this whole book? And he was required to do it because he'd already signed up for it. And I thought, oh my goodness, we're going to get in trouble. So I went to Audible. I downloaded the Audible app and I got the book for free because I have a free 30-day trial. And you want to know what? He finished that book in 2 days. He loved it. He loved it. Audiobooks. I'm a big fan of audiobooks. It's a great way to get your kids to read. Testing in a neutral environment, large print, frequent breaks. If you got a kid that has a hard time sitting still, you know what? Johnny, why don't you go get a drink of water? Come back. That kind of a thing. Preferential seating, breaking down their tasks. Graphic organizers. They're great. If you don't know what a graphic organizer is you provide them with little boxes to fill in and you're telling them what you want of them. Another really good tool. Fidgets, I love fidgets. Give them something to play with. They have all kinds of things online. They're cheap, you can find. Hey, they have things that you put on top of a pencil that makes no noise and it just spins around. The kid just does this with his little hand and it just spins around. It's a great use of getting, kind of getting that wiggles out. Computer, if they struggle to write, some kids, writing is very hard for them. Maybe they struggle with fine motor skills. Allow them to use the computer. Is it going to kill them? Is it going to kill you as a teacher that they don't turn it in with their own handwriting? Honestly, if I were you, sometimes I think it's laborious reading kids' handwriting. I'd rather have it on the computer. Do that. Get somebody to take their notes for them. Some kids, they use all of their mental energy just listening to you and trying to process what you're saying, and then you're asking them to write the notes down? They're not going to get anything out of it. And advanced organizers, which are very similar to graphic organizers. So these are the typical accommodations that you're going to see. So let's talk a little bit about the resource room. What time is this over? 30? 30? Okay. Your school needs to get somebody who has a passion for these kids. Okay? It could be a part-time mom. It could be a mom. That's a part-time. Maybe there's a mom that has a kid with learning needs. She goes, I will do it. Find somebody. Okay, maybe you're a librarian. I don't know. Find somebody who could have a passion for these kids. And you could set up a resource room. And I'm not telling you to do it. I'm telling this is your collective school, and you light the fire under them. That's your job. Okay. We need a classroom or an area. I went to a school. I went and observed at a Christian school, and they did it in the library. Great. It was a great use of the space because a lot of times, library day is on Friday. And a lot of times at a Christian school, the kids don't go to the library any other time but Friday or, whatever have you. So maybe that'd be another great use of the space, or maybe a little room off the office, or I don't know. And in this room, this is where that teacher, that person provides instruction. So if you've got a kid who is struggling in your math class and they need a little bit of individual instruction, they go to that resource room to get individual help. Maybe they're struggling to learn how to borrow. And do you as a teacher, when you have 20 kids in your class, do you have the time to individually go to them and help them? Of course not. But a resource room teacher could. They could spend that time with them, pulling them out and doing that differentiating instruction. Tutoring, giving them the tests orally or for extended time, that kind of a thing. The goal, we want to push them to perform at grade level. We want to push them to push. It's not because we're trying to make it easy for them. We're not trying, no. We are pushing them to perform to the best of their potential, essentially. That's our heart behind it. Let me tell you something, teachers. What is doing this for our kids? What will this do? How will this communicate to our parents? When we don't do this, how does that communicate to our parents?
You don't care.
We don't care. You're ambivalent. You don't care about my kid. I'm so frustrated. I have had lines. I have had phone calls. I have had emails from parents. I'm so frustrated. The teachers, it's like they don't care. It's like they don't want to help. Don't be that teacher. Don't be that school. Let's get these kids help that they need. It doesn't take a lot of money. It doesn't. It just takes some effort, people banding together to make it happen. This is kind of, why would we want a resource room? And I'm going to tell you why, because sometimes these kids need a non-threatening environment. Sometimes the big class where everybody else is doing well makes them shut down. And they're going, I'm the stupid one. Or I can't do it. Did you know that one of the major predictors of success is not IQ? It's not any kind of test scores. One of the major predictors of success is what they call self-efficacy. And that is the belief that you can do something. And so when these kids are in an environment where everybody else is succeeding except them, what does that do to their self-efficacy? They don't believe, I can't do this. It's obvious. So it gives them an environment where they're believed in. They're believed in. Small group sometimes allows them. There's something about they can get material better one-on-one or one-on-3 than they can in one-on-23. They need that small group instruction. Think about you, maybe you're a mom and you sit down with your son and he struggles with a certain aspect of school, and when you sit down and you tutor him individually in that, he gets it. It's kind of that kind of idea. Remediation for weak academic skills, especially in reading, writing, and math. And then instruction fit to meet their needs, essentially. The teacher in the general classroom can't fit her teaching to meet every single need, but the resource room really could help with that. What does it look like? So a resource room looks a lot like a typical elementary classroom. Always, I would very much suggest a table like this, so that the one-on-3 or the one-on-1, easy interaction. Bright, I say the less clutter, the better, because clutter is distracting. And frankly, teachers in general, I think too much clutter we have ADHD culture. Seriously, kids are easily distracted, so the less you can provide for them to be distracted by is the way to do it. This would be another great example of what a good resource room, a lot of centers, a lot of manipulatives, things like that. I was going to show you a video, but I'm going to keep moving past it. Remember, every student can learn, just not on the same day or in the same way. And sometimes we as teachers need to remember that. Our students are individual, they're unique, they bring different environmental development to the classroom. They bring different things, and it's our responsibility to remember, you know what, it's my job to teach them. It's not my job to change them. I have to teach them. And these are just some ways that we can do that. In my next session, I will be focusing on the hows, the practical. I have like 28 strategies that I can teach you how to do, and some interventions that I'll be showing you. So if you come, great. If not, I'd be happy to share that with you. You just let me know. I'm happy to be a service.